Forgotten Lore, Episode 2, The Great Shadow and Other Stories by Mário de Sá-Carneiro. And welcome back to Forgotten Lore, the YouTube show where we explore all the nooks and crannies of literature at the more obscure end of dark fiction. This particular book, The Great Shadow and Other Stories, is a work that I would call decadent fiction. It kind of falls into that category. Our author today, Mário de Sá-Carneiro, was born in 1890 in Lisbon, Portugal, and died in 1916 in Paris at the age of 25. He died by suicide, actually. So he falls in that period of time that, and also geographically at the place where decadent literature was teeming, and the work very much feels like decadent literature. Although I will say that it's more introspective and more transgressive to some degree than what I've read of decadent literature before this. So, and I like that. Those are qualities that I really appreciate. A lot of what's happening in these stories are kind of introspective kinds of things. The action, so to speak, is taking place in the consciousness of the characters. The book has 2 novellas and then a series of stories. So far, I've read the 2 novellas. I have not finished all the stories, in part because this guy's fiction is just so intense and that it's, afterwards you need to kind of have a little breather from it. But I'm going to go ahead and read a passage because I think this will give you a sense of what the feel of the prose is. So this is from a novella called Resurrection that is in this collection that I'm talking about. And here the author writes of one of his characters and says, he had never been afraid of going mad precisely because madness already existed inside him. Just as an organism can sometimes adapt to certain pernicious microbes, living unharmed by them, invulnerable to the illness which those same microbes would provoke in other organisms, so his spirit had grown invulnerable to madness, adapted to it, immunized against it by madness itself. I'm like, ooh, wow. Mind blown. Maybe not mind blown, but good stuff. Really interesting perspectives. And there's more where that came from. So that's a little bit about the book. I wanted to also talk about where I discovered this book and some links between this book and the work of Thomas Ligotti. I discovered this book at Thomas Ligotti online, and so there's a book recommendation part of that message board, and that's where I found out about it. And I read it, and I had read a lot of Ligotti already. That's what got me to the message board. And I just kind of read what I've read so far of this book, and I didn't really think about anything else after it as far as connections between the 2 works. And then last week, I was rereading the Ligotti story, The Night School, which is it's in the in this book, and I guess it's a story in Grimscribe, and so if you look in The Night School, there's a passage where it talks about the instructor of the night school, whose name is Instructor Carniero. Someone else says he's a Portuguese, but he's lived almost everywhere. It talks about him having a terribly serious affliction, all of which leads me to think that we're talking about our author today, Mário de Sá-Carneiro. So I thought that was interesting that Ligotti references Carniero in his story, The Night School, and the themes very much match up between the 2. A very interesting link to a very interesting author.